Deep within the territory of North Korea, there exists a special place that few outside the closed state know about, and which officially does not exist. It is not an ordinary town, and not a typical labor camp from the Kwanliso system. It is something far more sinister and carefully concealed from the outside world. Satellite images show a settlement with streets, buildings, and infrastructure, but on closer inspection, it becomes clear that it is a facade. Behind the appearance of an ordinary provincial town hides one of the most dreadful places on the planet, existing solely as a prison and a center of torture. This ghost town was built not for living, but for suffering. Not for the development of society but for the suppression of any dissent against the regime. Testimonies of the few survivors who managed to escape paint a picture of hell on earth, where human life is worth nothing, and pain is used as an instrument. The history of this place began in the 1970s, when the Kim Il-sung regime searched for new methods of dealing with political opponents. Ordinary prisons and labor camps seemed insufficiently effective for a certain category of prisoners who required a special approach and isolation from the rest of society. A decision was made to create a closed facility that would outwardly look like an ordinary settlement, but would function as a maximum security secret prison. Construction was carried out by prisoners from other camps, most of whom were killed after the work was completed, to preserve the secrecy of the facility's existence. The location was chosen in a remote mountain valley, surrounded by natural obstacles and tens of kilometers away from major population centers. Officially on maps, this place was marked as a closed military facility, and access within a radius of 15 kilometers was forbidden even to the military. The architecture of the ghost town was carefully designed to create the illusion of a normal settlement when observed from the air and from space. The streets are laid out in an orderly fashion, and the buildings have the typical appearance of North Korean residential houses and administrative structures of a medium-sized provincial town. There is a square with the obligatory monuments to the leaders, a building resembling a school, and several structures reminiscent of shops and public institutions of a small town. However, all these buildings are merely props for satellites. Inside they are converted into cells, interrogation rooms, torture chambers, and guard barracks. The windows of many buildings are bricked up from the inside, although from the outside, it appears that they function, and the glass reflects the sky and clouds. The underground part of the complex far exceeds in size what is visible on the surface. It contains the main cells and rooms for torture. The number of prisoners in this city prison is estimated at 3,000 to 5,000 people, although exact figures are known only to the top leadership of the security services. Those sent here are not ordinary criminals and not even rank-and-file political prisoners, but a special category of enemies of the regime who represent the greatest threat. These are former high-ranking officials who have fallen from favor, military personnel suspected of conspiracy, members of families of high-ranking defectors, and foreigners of certain categories. People whom the regime wants to erase completely from history, whose existence must be forgotten by society forever, are also sent here. Conditions of confinement here are considerably worse than in ordinary Kwanliso camps, where prisoners at least work and have a chance to survive for years. In the ghost town, the average lifespan of a prisoner is from 6 months to 2 years, after which their bodies disappear without a trace. The regime of confinement is built on total isolation from the outside world and constant psychological and physical pressure around the clock without respite. Prisoners are held in solitary cells measuring 2 by 3 meters, where a hard wooden bunk and a bucket for waste barely fit. Lights burn around the clock or, conversely, prisoners are kept in complete darkness for weeks to disorient and break them psychologically. Feeding is carried out once a day with a portion of watery corn porridge with salt, the caloric content of which is insufficient to sustain normal vital functions. Water is supplied irregularly. Sometimes prisoners are left without water for several days, their slow fading and suffering observed. The temperature in the cells is not regulated. In winter, inmates freeze, and in summer they suffocate from the heat in sealed rooms without ventilation for years. Torture is not a punishment for misdeeds, but a daily routine, part of a system aimed at the complete destruction of personality and human dignity. Methods range from traditional beatings to sophisticated psychological techniques developed by specially trained interrogation and torture experts with years of experience. Electroshock is used not only to inflict pain, but also to destroy the nervous system, turning people into incoherently mumbling beings. Prisoners are forced to hold unnatural positions for hours, causing muscle cramps and damage to internal organs from prolonged strain. Psychological torture is no less cruel than physical torture, aimed at destroying personality and the will to resist once and for all. A technique of false releases is applied, in which a person is told they are being freed, led toward the exit, and then returned to the torture cell. Relatives are brought to the prisoners' interrogations and tortured in their sight, forcing them to witness the suffering of their loved ones and feel guilt for what is happening. Sound torture includes the continuous playback of loud noises, screams, and ideological slogans, which deprives one of sleep and leads to hallucinations within a week. Isolation lasts for months, without a single human contact, which destroys the psyche even of the most resilient people, turning them into broken beings. The complex's guards consist of specially selected and ideologically trained servicemen who undergo harsh selection and brainwashing before assignment. They are indoctrinated to believe that the prisoners are subhuman, enemies of the people who do not deserve sympathy and must suffer for their crimes. Guards rotate every 3 months to prevent the possible emergence of sympathy for inmates or a desire to help them escape. Any guard who shows the slightest compassion toward a prisoner himself becomes a prisoner and is subjected to the same tortures, serving as an example to the others. The families of the guards live in a special settlement nearby and are effectively hostages, guaranteeing the servicemen's loyalty to the regime and their superiors. The pay of the guards is significantly higher than the army average, which creates competition among military personnel for positions in this unit.